I'm just going to give a brief welcome. We'll move from here into the next. What I wanted to do, what I wanted to mention right now before we get started is if you could take out your phones and click on this QR code, you'll be taken to menti.com. And the idea, what we want to do here is that as we do the presentations, as you have questions, please put them in the Menti. You're always welcome to raise your hand, of course, not after the presentation, but after all three presentations are done. Feel free to raise your hand, but we wanted to use Menti as a way of getting more inclusive input. So please do that. If you're not using your phone, you can go to menti.com and put in that code 8930-8775. Good. So without much further wait, we'll launch into the next item on our program, and that is a short set of remarks from Dr. Christian Witt, who is a senior program officer at the Gates Foundation. He very much wanted to be here, but couldn't be because they're having a retreat at the Gates Foundation for the entire ag development team. So unfortunately, none of them could be here. So without waiting much longer, I'm going to go into the presentation now. This is the first question, I guess, for the Menti. So you should see that when you flash the code. You should see that and feel free to answer it right away. We're not taking questions from the audience yet. We're just taking responses. All right. So Barbara, you want to start the video? Christian very kindly recorded this message for us.
Hello, Barbara. Hello, everyone. Good day. My name is Christian Witt. I'm a senior program officer at the Gates Foundation. I am in the agriculture development team overseeing our work on soil health and agronomy. And I wish I could be there. We have a team retreat at the moment in Seattle, which prevents me from being there. But happy to contribute in this way. Thank you.
What do you see as the most important outcome of data-driven agriculture innovation? Yeah.
Well, just now, our ability to generate and process data is changing dramatically, which offers new opportunities. We not only have more and more access to remotely sensed data, we also have increasingly access to training data from the field, and not just biophysical data, but also socioeconomic data. Some of them, of course, structured data from field trials, but also large amounts of unstructured data. And we have new vehicles for the delivery and co-creation of customized solutions to individuals, to farmers, or their farms and fields, which in turn offers opportunities to take advantage of data from the field to improve services or solution development while at the same time generating new research questions. It's not just about trial data that we scientists are used to generate and analyze. Through new technologies, including AI and large language models, we have and we can generate and analyze data differently. And this is a rapidly evolving area for natural sciences to explore and embrace. Ultimately, we will have better tools to develop better and more customized solutions for and with farmers and other user groups in the agricultural space, who will also want to engage differently with the scientific community. This process should lead to greater agency at the individual or organizational level and improve our ability to respond to challenges in near real time, such as shocks related to weather events or pest outbreaks.
Having listened to what you've said, how could the CGIAR and its partners do this rapidly and effectively, particularly given our data and AI-focused landscape?
Well, for one, it will be important to agree on the main infrastructure, the implementation of fair data principles, the sharing of data, models and code, probably shifting incentives towards joint problem solving and more. But it seems to me that it will be key to accelerate the shift from a supply-driven research agenda towards demand-driven research. A process that has already started, but it comes with accompanying changes in partnership modalities. What then are the solutions that we're contributing to as researchers? How do we ensure tight innovation partnership with public and private sector? How do we organize ourselves? What exactly is our contribution? How do we prioritize, and what are the trade-offs between all the things we could be working on? I think it's important to develop really an own position, and then engage with partners and funders. For the CGIAR, so how do we best utilize also the broad expertise across centers and still keep the focus? There are as many operational as technical or scientific questions we need to answer. This will likely require a clear focus on well-defined challenges at the highest level that could then be built out in response to regional context. And if bespoke solutions are needed, they might need to be left to others to deal with.
Interesting. So do you see progress in achieving a data-driven transformation through the CGIAR?
Yes, we have seen significant progress in recent years with the development of deterministic models for decision support. So, for example, cassava, banana, rice, maize, and apologies for leaving out some other crops that the CGIAR has been working on, with new opportunities to inform AI-enabled advisories going forward, focusing on depth of impact. So how do we cater to the required quality that a farmer demands, and also making sure that she has the agency over the solution, not just dropped onto her. I think will be going forward immensely important. But we've seen the shortening of also, let's say, development cycles, moving faster into new crops, moving faster in new geography and crop combinations, for one. Another example might be the ex-ante work and modeling to scope out and address soil acidity and other binding constraints. And maybe to name one that's a bit more complex, even, like the system adaptation in rice wheat systems to address heat stress during flowering of wheat in the Indo-Gangetic plains, with cascading effects on genetic choices, turnover of cropping cycles. All of these have in common a very strong spatial data modeling component, and unpacking really the various factors contributing to the ultimate solution. So there's a lot that has been already achieved, and a lot to build on.
Okay. So where do you see challenges that we must continue working on as the CGIAR and also as the industry, really? What would you say we should continue working on?
Well, there are many areas that the CGIAR is well positioned to contribute to, including data-driven, well-validated advisory solutions that can be quickly deployed in new geographies, benchmarking of solutions, content corpus development, just to name a few. And all of these will require openly shared and well-documented algorithms, and cementing a culture of open and standardized data for joint innovation in ag R&D institutions. A starting point could be strategic partnerships with organizations that are driving solution development, for example, in AI-enabled advisory services, or development initiatives by national or international organizations where the CGI can provide significant support and input to the design of efforts. It will also be important to run a good set of innovation challenges to attract the next generation of scientists working on the problems of tomorrow.
That's quite interesting stuff to hear that we should continue working on. We've got in the room today, Christian, teams from extension institutions, from research institutions. We've got scaling partners in the room with us today. Is there anything else you would like to say to them as we have this event today?
The only thing I'd like to say is I wish I could be there. We have a team retreat in Seattle, so unfortunately that prevents me from being with you, but would have loved to hear all the different perspectives and engage in conversations. So all the best and have a fruitful meeting. Thank you.
Well, it's unfortunate that Christian could not be here, but I also want to thank and recognize Barbara. She's been a driving force behind a lot of the putting all of this together. She was the interviewer you saw there. So thank you very much, Barbara. And with that, we're now going to launch into the presentations. I'm going to hand over to Todd.
Sure thing. Thanks, Meta. So I'm Todd.
Is it on?
It's on, but we're both small, but I'm a little bit less small. So yes, Todd Rosenstock. I'm a principal scientist at the Alliance of Biodiversity in Seattle, and I lead the climate work under the Sustainable Farming Program. And so right now we're going to move from Seattle back into this room, and we have three really exciting presentations about really concrete solutions of how data is helping push agronomic and sustainable farming solutions out today. So really getting down into some of the nitty gritty. And so with that, I'm going to have three speakers in a row. Each will have about 10 minutes. As I get closer to them, their time will be running up. So if you see me slightly pulling them off the stage, you'll know what's going on. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to keep us on time. And they will all introduce themselves. Let's start with John, please.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is John Choptiani. I'm a senior scientist at IITA, and I lead the resilience and climate adaptation work across IITA. Let's see if this is working. Great. So I'm going to start by sort of setting the scene. I'm the first of the three presentations, and then we have a panel discussion and more opportunity for engagement from the audience. But I really want to start by setting the baseline of where we are with climate change, recognizing that everything is different with climate change, and there's a lot of new impacts and challenges. No. Okay, great. So agronomy, it's one of the oldest sciences around. People have been farming for thousands of years. With climate change, and especially at the rate that it is happening, these traditional practices are no longer as effective as they could be. Combining that with lack of formal education, climate information services, and access to the best, latest practices, there's a large gap between what is currently happening and what the potential is, both on the yields and income, but also on impacts on climate, reducing climate change, et cetera. One of the great things about agronomy and agriculture broadly is that you have a lot of agency. You may not be able to buy a tractor, but there's almost always something that a farmer can do on their farm to make a difference to improve their lives and improve the impact on the environment. So that's really exciting because there are about 500 million smallholder farmers and many other farmers beyond that. So it's a wide scope to make large impact. But how do we do this, and what is our role? So one of the big things is we can't do it all ourselves. It's a huge challenge, but we need partnerships. So CGIAR is well placed to provide a lot of the background, the science, the research, but we also need other partners to scale, the private sector, NGOs, government, et cetera. And then although agriculture is hyperlocal, we do need digital tools to be able to scale. Training one person at a time will not allow us to reach 500 million smallholder farmers in a meaningful way. Next slide, please. Is this working now? Excellent. Okay. So a little more context. I won't stay long on this. Everyone knows climate change is bad. Predominantly, there are some benefits, but predominantly it's bad. It's creating large impacts in productivity, incomes, shocks, stresses, etc. So we have massive declines. So while we need to increase our yields and productivity and efficiencies, we're in many cases going in the wrong direction because of climate change impacts. This is causing massive amounts of money to be lost or not earned. And it's having a larger impact on marginalized communities, groups, women, etc. One of the challenges is you don't want to provide recommendations that could create maladaptation. As I mentioned before, agriculture is hyperlocal. One farm here versus the other side of a river, a hill on the leeward side, etc., can be very different. And providing blanket recommendations or generic climate information, weather information, can provide recommendations that may result in people doing the wrong choice. What may have been right for them, or may have been the right choice last year and may not be this year. These can exacerbate more vulnerabilities among marginalized groups. And it could, especially with short-term projects, people want to get high gains, high income yields, and that can often come at the expense of long-term adaptation and putting people into short-term money revenue generating activities, but can degrade the land and cause longer-term problems. So how do we address this? We here, generally speaking, we are well off. Most smallholder farmers, that they have a very small income and almost all of their resources are invested in their farm. The decisions that they make have massive consequences for their livelihoods. So any recommendations or activities they do needs to really take into account that there's a mask of risk that if it doesn't go well, that could have massive impacts on their livelihood. So there's a trust issue, and there's also a moral issue of making sure that we provide the right kind of resources to them. And as I keep mentioning, agriculture is hyper-local. Each person both has a different agroecological zone, different soils, temperature, slope, etc. But they also have their own unique personalities, skills, education, etc. So we need to have something that's both large scale and also hyper-local. Some of the things that we need to do are massively increase the extension services. This could be government, could be private sector, could be NGO. But right now, typically you're having one extension agent or thereabouts to hundreds, if not thousands of farmers. And that means you're getting advice, maybe once a year or very superficially. Digital advisory tools, they have the potential to really scale. A lot is known about what practices are good, where, when, but getting that into the hands of people who speak many different languages, may have low literacy rates, low digital literacy, is a huge challenge. And we're going to be talking about some of the good work that's being done on that now. Money is usually a limiting factor. There's often others, but having access to finance to actually implement some of these practices, some of them may cost almost nothing, but some of them do cost a fair amount of money. So innovative models can really empower people to make these changes. And then the trust issue. We need to do things in a participatory way. Farmers have been doing practices for generations. Some of them are still really well suited to the current context, but some aren't. Learning from them, sharing with them, and making sure it's not someone coming from far away and saying, you must do this, but rather co-developing those practices will make them much more effective and more likely to be implemented. So I'm going to give two very rapid examples of work that CGIAR has done in this space, and then we'll get more depth with the next presentations. So this here is the Evidence for Resilient Agriculture, the ERA. This is a massive database for evaluating the impact on climate change, yields, productivity, resilience, etc. And what it has is a meta-analysis of thousands of studies, looking at spatial data, and then looking at the impact of changing technology, what works where, what are climate predictions in terms of what crops will grow well under future scenarios. Can you still grow X crop in northern Ghana or the Sahel, or should we be swapping to another food system? There will be realities that are uncomfortable, that if we do not reach the 1.5 degrees, which is very unlikely, if we go to 2 or more, that certain cropping systems will not be viable and we'll have to make hard choices to make changes. This is an amazing resource for people to use to then inform decision-making at the policy and then NGO, et cetera, level. Second one here is another data-driven agricultural decision-making tool in Zambia, providing seasonal forecasts to farmers in Zambia, really creating more tangible, action-oriented. Because it's one thing to say, here is weather information. It's another to say, well, what do I do with it? It's going to rain today. What do I do? Should I be planting? Should I be preparing? Should I hold off? What do I need to do? And they need to know that information, not just humidity is X amount. Thanks. What do I do with that? So last slide before Todd kicks me off. I just want to say, leading into the next presentations, some of the things that we need to move forward. We have a lot of the information we need to provide recommendations. There's still a lot more to be done. And one of the main issues is having robust frameworks, systems that are compatible, interlinked, so that we don't have lots of different databases and recommendations, but having them integrated in a way that's accessible. And then we can hand that off to governments, private sector, NGOs to then, be more action oriented, get that into the hands of farmers. But it needs to be in a way that's accessible and action oriented. While we do know lots of information, there are knowledge gaps, and climate change is making everything more difficult, and it's changing. So we need to keep updating our models, our forecasts, and getting more and more data to make these recommendations as accurate as possible, given the gravity of the impacts that the recommendations can have. Integration, we need to get this into the hands of the farmers. We need to be getting it on the fields. It can't just be data modeling. That's an important part, but it needs to also get down into the field and into the hands of farmers. And then lastly, digital scaling. This is a huge problem, and it needs to be done not one farmer at a time, but it needs to be done at a massive scale to create large impacts. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And just a brief reminder before we move to our next presentation that we will be using the Menti to ask questions after the 3 presentations are over. So you can jot them in there now, or you can just jot them on your pad and we'll get to them after the 3 presentations. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Wulato Barra. I work for the Alliance of Biodiversity International in CIAT as a senior scientist. For SFP, I am also leading an analytical team who is responsible for developing decision support tools. So my talk today will be about decision support tool in action. So basically a continuation of what John presented. So the context is already established. You can see in the traditional agronomy science, specific locations, few context has been studied, and a lot of researcher has been investing their time on that. But in reality, that lacks context. It's not scalable. So there is also a lot of demand by all the sectors in smallholder farmer. So the idea of decision support tool, as described before, is about bringing all the knowledge, all the informations, and the advanced analytics and models together to develop a guidance and to provide site and context information to the key actors in the sector, basically the smallholder farmers. So it's all about empowering smallholder farmers at scale around improve the productivity, the quality, the soil health, and it's all about yield stability in the context of the climate change, as you saw in the previous presentation, and how to improve the resource use efficiency and other labor use efficiency. So then how do we develop these decision support tools and how we deploy them on the ground? in the previous investments or initiatives, the CGIAR initiatives, for example, in excellence in agronomy, we have these strict approaches and steps to move from one step to the scaling. And we call them the 7-step process, but here I will aggregate them into 4. The first one is building partnership, right? So who is the core partner from the CGIAR, from the national system, from the demand partners? Once we establish that partnership, we wanted to identify the issues, the challenges, the geography in the farming system. Now we have the partnership, the issues, the challenge, the farming system. We wanted to develop a decision support system or co-develop the decision support system based on these issues, the priorities that we identify with the key partners in the area, in the geography. Now, this means basically bringing all the legacy data. If we have to go to the field and do additional trial data, we also do that. We combine with remote sensing, machine learning, and other, crop models to be able to respond to the demand, the challenge that is articulated by the demand partner in a particular geography and, setups. Now, once we develop the decision support tools, we have a set of steps to take it from there to the farmers to scale it. So we start from the validations. We have strict protocol, how the validation should look like, and then the piloting, and then the scaling. So that has been done with the partners, and they have to evaluate the results. We have strict statistical performance on this and the feedback from the farmer, and then it will be ready for scaling and pre-scaling, handing over to the demand partners. So this is some of the examples that we have been delivering across the global south. There are 20 use cases. You don't need to read them. Basically, in the global south, we started, some years ago. We have 2 cohorts. Cohort 1 is basically where the use case reached in the scaling and pre-scaling stage, whereas cohort 2 is at the early stage of that implementation action on the ground at the validation steps. You don't need to read the country, but it's all about the partnerships in a particular geography, and also the implementation on the ground. So it covers large number of CGIAR scientists, national research system, and we bring a lot of partner along those geographies, and we were able to validate, pilot all these technologies, more than 500,000 in the last couple of years. I will mention a few examples. I will take you first to Ethiopia. In this case, we developed this next-gen agro advisory. It combines large data set by national system and combined with machine learning, other crop models to generate the planting date, fertilizer type, fertilizer rate, and other soil amendment options. With a partner, particularly with the Ministry of Agriculture, with Digital Green, we develop a dissemination mechanism. It could be, chatbot, it could be a web app and other options to be able to validate first with few number of farmers, in this case around 300 farmers. And then in the next year, we pilot it with 4,000 farmers. And the performance was really amazing. There was a possibility to increase yield by 38%, and the profitability, the partial profitability around 400 USD per hectare. And as a result of that, in the subsequent year, we were able to scale the solution more than 75,000 farmers across the highland of Ethiopia. So this is just one example. And the second example, I will take you to Morocco. So the Morocco use case is about conservation agriculture. It has 2 solutions. The first one is mechanized conservation agriculture with spatially explicit agronomic solutions. So with this solution, we were able to reach more than 160,000 hectares is covered with this mechanization conservation agriculture practices. And we were able to reach around 5,000 smallholder farmer in this context. The second solution in this use case is dashboard for monitoring conservation agriculture that is being able to use for monitoring, reporting, and verification of CA implementation, conservation agriculture implementations. And now this is being selected by the Ministry of Agriculture and the World Bank project to monitor 1 million hectare conservation agriculture plan by 2030. So I'm continuing to other use cases, other implementation on the ground. So let's come back to home, Kenya. So in this case, the ask was with Carlo. They asked us if we can increase yield by 30% with the same amount of fertilizer, total fertilizer amount. And we developed the decision support tool to provide site-specific fertilizer recommendation spatially. And that was done 2 years ago. And last year, we were able to validate it with around 300 farmers. And the result is now being analyzed. And more or less, the finding is encouraging. Now, I'll take you to Rwanda. So this is also the same thematic. It's about site-space fertilizer recommendation. So the ask was RAP is interested to increase yield by 20%, so increase the target yield. And they wanted to see where and what kind of fertilizer, how much rate to apply on the ground. So we developed site-specific fertilizer recommendations, and we cluster it a bit for logistic reason. And you can see we were able to come up with 6 fertilizer type and rate, and we provide this to RAP, and RAP implemented it to smaller farm on the ground. So there was encouraging results. Around 74% of the time, the site-specific fertilizer recommendation we deployed using this decision support increases yield comparing to the national extension service. And there is the other 26% of the time, there is more or less the same performance or sometimes less. Now, this will be my last example. Here is Akilimo. It's about cassava. The thematic area is about fertilizer recommendation, intercroppings, and the planting schedules. And with these tools, we were able to reach more than 8,000 extension agents trained, and 500,000 farmers were reached in the last couple of years. And the adoption is really amazing. Around 73% of the reach were able to adopt some of these components. So these are some examples that decision support in action on the ground across the global south. Now, the future direction, this will be my last slide. We need to expand the partnerships in the use case. As you can see, so far the focus is the use cases, which means there is a solution, there is a decision support tools. There are few demand partners, 1 or 2, but then we need to be able to figure out how to disseminate these solutions at a scale with large number of partners and stakeholders. The second one is the time going from the development of decision support or collecting the data to the development of the decision support tool, it can take longer time. So we need to be able to fast track that process so that we can, make the decision support to the farmer in a short time lag. So here we are trying to build a team around AgWise. It's a modular modeling framework, and we are bringing the team around one group so that we will fast track the development of these solutions around fertilizer, soil health, and other areas. Another one, accelerating recommendation to new geographies. So I mentioned few geographies, few crops, but then that has to be fast tracked to large area, new crops, and the demand is huge. So we need to respond to that demand. Scaling strategy, because now we have few paths, few demand partners. We need to be able to explore how that scaling strategy should look like, how the policy look like, how the engagement with government and the private sector should look like. And at the end, the bottleneck for all this is availability of data. So if we invest in the verification of data and the availability of the data, making it standard is the next steps. We need to work on that direction. That's also related to the policy, the governance, how data sharing look like, and that will be the next front to generate quality decision support tool for the small farmer in general. I think that's all from my end. Thank you very much.
So again, if you have questions, please throw them on the Menti and we'll address them after this last session, which is me. I realized that I welcomed you and forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Medha Devari. I'm a senior scientist at IITA, and I'm going to be talking about picking up from where John and Wulitau left off. How do we enable this data-driven transformation that we're all after? The what, the how, and the why. So Wulitau, in his last slide, was talking about verification of data. What is fair data? Findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data, actionable data, essentially. The first thing that we need to do in our thinking is to clarify expectations and governance. Wulitau also mentioned governance. How do we do this? Well, CGIAR has a policy. I don't know how many people at CGIAR are even aware of this, but it's called the Open and Fair Data Assets Policy. It's in place. It clarifies what is expected and gives a little bit, sort of starts moving a little bit into how that can be assessed. But in addition to that, many of our funders are also have increasingly mature requirements. In this case, the Gates Foundation is now specifically encouraging grantees to move much more towards open, not from open data, not just open data, but fair data. So they're emphasizing findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reuse. Interoperability means the ability to quickly aggregate, compile data, and do interesting stuff with it of the sort that we need to develop these kinds of decision support tools. So that's the what. What should I be doing? Tell me what. Then the next question becomes, how should I do this? We heard about the decision support tools, the advisories that we're all sort of aiming for and getting there quickly, because it's no good for a demand partner to come to us this year and for us to say 3 years from now, okay, here's what you asked for. We need to move fast. We need to be agile. In order to do that, we need the decision support tools. We need analytics and modeling. Wulitau mentioned AgWise, so I've put an example there in that box as AgWise. To do all of this, we absolutely need modeling and analysis ready data. And we're very, very far from this. What we're trying to do at CGIAR is, particularly in the Sustainable Farming Program, is to enable all of this. So we have a way to search for data and aggregate data. You can use, and the tools are in there, the links are there, Guardian and Data Lake, and I'll flash a code later on so that you know what I'm talking about. But we have that data search aggregate layer. To feed that layer, however, you do need standards compliant data. How's that going to work? So we have two approaches. One is for data that you're going to collect. It would be great if we could all go out to our field trials and collect data already standardized, right? Saves a lot of time, good metadata, well-described data with, that's standards compliant to the extent possible anyway. And we have tools to do that, both from control trials, which is the Agronomy Field Information Management System, or AgroFIMS, and from surveys, which is DataScribe. I'm not going to talk much more about them, but I've just put them up so you know that there are solutions out there, which may not be perfect, but it's a place to start from, certainly. We have a lot of historical data. And tools like the ones that John and Wulitau mentioned are data hungry. We have the data, but it's in terrible shape. Data is very, very messy. So we have ways to standardize the data. I'll dive a little bit into that. The idea is to make the data interoperable in order to make these solutions work. Develop the solutions in the first place. I mentioned Guardian. Now I'm going to dive into the how. Okay, fine. You're telling me that this is all important. So how do I go about it? How do I find publications and data? You can go to Guardian. I've put the URL there, guardian.cgr.org. Gardin, not with the U. And you can do a search. It's like, think of it as a sort of a Google for searching not only CGIAR's data repositories and publications repositories, but a number of our partners. And if you as a partner come to us and say, I've got some great data, I'd like you to index it, we can do that. Guardian is a metadata indexer, and we can harvest metadata from any repository, really, and present it back in a consistent way. You can also, there's also an advanced search, you can refine, you can play with it in different ways. There are different other functionalities. If you look at the top menu, there's maps, which is a data cube essentially of about 14,000 layers of soil data, crop production data, and future climate data as well. And these are all standardized to 1 kilometer resolution, so you can download that data. There's an API to it, and you can do interesting stuff with that, including, for the AgWise and other decision support tools. Lately, I don't know if the Jawu Ku is here in this room, but IFPRI has been leading an initiative with us to develop a large language model on about 50,000 of the open publications that are in Guardian. So you can go into Guardian now, and there's a thing called Ask CG. You can click on that, and you can ask CG, how do I manage weeds in potato? And it will actually dive into those publications and pull something up. This is more a pilot. We're going to be working on it more as we go along. But it is something that's quite nifty and should help us go further with it. Digital Green is already testing this with their farmer chat to see, is there useful information coming out of it? Okay, so I talked about Guardian. How do I find analysis-ready data? Because the stuff in Guardian is great to find data and publications, but it's not interoperable. We've developed a data lake, which is essentially a set of different databases. You can set up a database, manage it the way you want with permissions that you want. And in this data lake, you can do a search. Give me all of the data for maize in sub-Saharan Africa that's been fertilized with urea or any amount of inorganic fertilizer. In natural language, that would be your search. You can pull that data up. It may be 10 data sets, it may be 100 data sets, but it all comes to you in a consistent format because it has been standardized. And you can download that data and use it for machine learning or with a few less pain, hopefully, for crop modeling, particularly for a crop model like DSAT, which is the one we typically use. So we're getting closer to that kind of agility that Wilitawu and his teams are looking for. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So now I talked about standardized data, verifying data. This really should be the emphasis of where we start. What we should be doing is trying to look at our historical data and standardize it. We have a way to do it, an open source tool called Carib. It's completely open source, which means that, to Christian's point, we're not only making the data fair and available, we're also allowing you to participate with us and use the code. So it's all there. Currently with Carib, the Carib database, we have over 2,100 standardized data sets and over 1.5 million data points or observations. And they cover a lot of different topics, from agronomy to varietal data, essentially. So we're trying it's completely data agnostic. It doesn't have to be only agronomy data. It can be breeding data as well that we're standardizing. So this is something that we're using quite a bit. The question is, you might say, okay, this is great, but why do we need this? Why do we need to standardize data? So if you look, I've put up a little schematic there. And you see it's a circle with different colors. And that's what a data scientist typically does with data. That's the amount of time, essentially, that a data scientist spends on different operations to be able to use data. What do you think that big green part is? Who can tell me what that big green part is? Cleaning, processing, quality controlling. This thing says 60%, but if you ask many data scientists, they say, no, that's wrong. We actually take more than 80% of our time on this. So yeah, and Wilita was nodding, he knows it well. This is the reason why we need to standardize data. Data is really messy. And I've put up an example here to show you. It's actually a pretty decent data set. But what you see things like this all the time. Tables on top of each other in Excel, which then become really difficult to manage. You know, I've pointed an arrow there. There's something above in the column, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. You don't know why that is. There's no explanation for it. There's something called E and V, which I can imagine to be environment, but there are numbers there, and the metadata for this does not tell you what those numbers are. You can look at the column headings. There's something called PLSTHN. It's not in the metadata oftentimes. And I can guess that that's plant stand. I have no clue what HN is. Luckily, that was in the metadata, and that stands for high nitrogen. But in order to reuse this data, you need to understand this. This is a good data set. It's not a bad data set. I've seen worse by quite a bit. And then you have numbers with no units. So you have no clue. I mean, you can try and guess at what, based on the crop. I'm assuming this is plant height, PLHT. So if I know the crop, hopefully I can guess what the units are. But, you know, it would be nice to have a little bit more standardization there. So I promised you that I would show you a QR code for the tools. You can scan that, or you can go to guardian.cgr.org and just play with it. It will not show up well on your mobile because Guardian is not intended to work on a mobile, but it'll give you, at least you can walk away from here with a link. So the question is why? Why should we manage our data and standardize it? Well, it showcases your research, increases its impact. It absolutely supports good science, reproducibility, accuracy. It reduces duplication of effort. Return on investment is a really important thing. And you can compile data much more easily for much more agile solutioning and innovation. And it helps you stay current in this changing and very rapidly advancing technology landscape. Otherwise, we miss the boat and we risk becoming irrelevant. So I want to just have 2 or 3 more slides on the why, the success stories really. Wuletawu mentioned AgWise, which is really pushed by demand, and it has been shown to increase yields by up to 30% as well as generate income benefits. He didn't address that very much, but in some countries we've seen that as well. It builds recommendations for any crop, any country, but we absolutely need standardized data for it. And for many of our AgWise efforts, we're using CARIB to standardize the data and make that possible. Impact assessment is another example. I think John, you mentioned impact. We've done that with our validation data from our trials. When we validate the MVPs in one of the steps that Wuletawu mentioned, we collect the data in a standardized way, but we have to clean it further. So we also use CARIB for this part of it, to make sure that our data is standardized, we can analyze, and we can present it in a way that's meaningful. Here's another paper. This is my second last slide that was published in Nature Food. These scientists tried to address or answer where in Africa or sub-Saharan Africa can fertilizer use be profitable? They went to Guardian. They found data for 760 locations in sub-Saharan Africa. They used CARIB to standardize that data. They developed machine learning models, combined soil, weather, and price data, and they were able to report on where fertilizer use could be profitable based on the assumptions that they were making, of course. This is another paper I want to put up, published actually by Wuletawu and a large group of people, where they also standardized data from about almost 130 locations for wheat in Ethiopia. Again, they combined with climate and soil data, used machine learning, and were able to develop recommendations for NP and K for Ethiopia that they are now piloting, I think. Yes. And the last example I want to point to is by colleagues at CIMMYT, in fact, who used a CARIB-like approach where in fact, it's feeding back now into CARIB. So it's coming full circle. Their approach will enrich our work through CARIB, the scripts that we use. But they're trying to get a sense of smallholder farm size distribution across sub-Saharan Africa. And so all of this requires standardized data. And I hope that you can see that in this presentation. So I've tried to address the what, the how, and the why. And I hope that it made, it came together as a story. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much to the 3 presentations. And I think we've seen many concrete examples. I counted about 11 that I hope, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's many more throughout the CGIAR, the Sustainable Farming Program, that really show quite excellence in our delivering real world impact on the ground today, but also help set the agenda for what's to come tomorrow. And so with that, it's time to play our favorite workshop game, which is Menti. Then you get ahead of yourself, Barbara. Menti. It's one of the few times you're going to be asked to get your phones out instead of putting them away in a workshop. So please, put on your. There's no actual prizes though, but I will maybe call on you, so be ready. Please go to the Menti. You should have, if you haven't already, and you have 5 seconds to do this. I don't see enough phones out. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Okay, Barbara. Let's get some questions for the panel. Are you going to put them up? Not for the panel, for the speakers. Excuse me, I misspoke, Barbara. Can you, yeah, can you put them on the Menti on the board? I can see a lot of them on your screen, Barbara. Oh, but we want them to see them. We want them to see them. Yeah, we can. So the first question goes to John. Oh, you can also do it from your thing. Let's see. There's about, wow, 17 questions here, John. So you're going to have some homework. Okay. Many other organizations, including the private sector, are providing digitally based advisory services. What is the CG's comparative advantage in this space?
I think we provide a lot of the really hard sciences, the background on the ground and in the labs, that real basic, but not actually basic science that can feed into those decision support tools, the advisory services. We're not the only ones, but we have a massive reach worldwide. And it's not just in universities, but we connect with universities, and we're also piloting that, getting it in the hands of farmers and making sure that it's action oriented. But I think it's, yeah, we have almost 10,000 people across the CGIAR that are contributing to this.
Thanks, John. And I think this is a really critical question. So I actually am going to ask Meta to follow up what on her views on the comparative advantage of the CGIAR.
Well, I think our comparative advantage is in our research and the data, just like you were alluding to. And I think we need to figure out the right modalities to work with a number of different partners. We cannot be inward looking only. We will not succeed, and we don't want to work that way. We want to work with broad partnerships and make sure that we can use our data and knowledge corpuses to good effect and share that more widely and openly for impact.
And we have Meta.
Meta is our comparative advantage, I think, is it's our metadata. I guess that's the first time I said that. I'm gonna use that in the future. So how do you ensure? This is a question for Willito. This is changing. Christine from Innovations for Poverty Action asked, well, where is Christine? Maybe she can ask her own question. Please go ahead, Christine. Please use the microphone.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Christine Imali from Innovations for Poverty Action. My question was to presenter number 2. How do you ensure sustainability? Do your partners need to keep coming to you all the time, or do you do any capacity building to ensure that they are self-sustainable for future evaluations so that they can use their own data going forward?
Good. Can I respond to this?
Yes,
Yeah. So if you see in the workflow, the first one is the partnership part. So the issue, the solution, all this has to be co-developed with them, and part of that is to do the capacity building, handing over this one. So there is strict steps going from the problem identification, co-development, all the validation, implementation on the ground has to be done with the local partners. And part of that specifically for the decision support tools is giving the training, capacity building. In the long run, they will take it and run with their operation. So that has been the use case modality in this case. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And we are having to move a little faster because we started a little later. So I'm going to skip to one of the questions for presentation 3, which for Meta, I think would be, how will the cultural bottlenecks, different CGs following their own different data management practices be overcome?
Right.
Just an
I'm
easy
not
one.
sure. Yeah. I'm not sure I have a satisfactory answer for that, but it is something that we're trying to work on through programs like the programs we have now in the portfolio. I think that we made quite a bit of progress, for instance, even during the initiatives. With EIA, with the Excellence in Agronomy Initiative, we had just about every center being part of that initiative. We were trying to put in place these tools, some of which I mentioned here, and kind of get their use. The point is not to crack the whip on the specific tools. The point is to focus on the outcomes. So whatever you're using, if it's standards compliant, if we're all using the same standards or almost the same standards, we can get there. If we are using different data collection tools, that's fine. Let's just use the same standards and make sure that the data that comes out can be aggregated easily, compiled easily, can ideally be part of a single data lake, because I don't know of any other self-respecting organization that doesn't have its own data bank and its own single data bank. So that is something that we need to address, that we're not doing very well on, but hopefully can do that pretty sure. We talk about gene banks. We should be talking about data as an asset along the same lines. So sorry, I've taken too much time.
No, it's great. It's great. Thanks, Meta.
Yeah.
And I think the last question, we're not only, we obviously clearly don't have all the answers up here. And so we're really looking to you to help spur the sort of next generation of what the sustainable farming program and the data programs do within the CG. So please give us some ideas. Barbara, can you go to the next question? The next question on the Menti should say something like, what are the biggest opportunities? And hopefully you can see it. Is it there? Can you see? Thumbs up from somebody? What is the biggest opportunity in using data to drive sustainable agriculture in your context? Would anybody like to share an insight while people are answering? Somebody. Saito, let me put you on the spot. What's the biggest opportunity that you see for using data?
Big opportunity
For using data.
For
using data.
Nobody can see that.
Yes, first, as a scientist, we say that meta-analysis and so on, but we really need to identify the opportunity using data. So targeting and prioritization using big data.
Targeting and prioritization, a key theme that's coming up quite a bit in CGIAR. So I think with that, maybe we'll.
Could answer another.
No, we're going to move directly to the panel. And with that, I think we'll move directly to the panel. So I'll turn it over to Oscar. Oscar is the interim director of the Sustainable Farming Program, and he'll lead us through the panel discussion.
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming to this very important topic of data science, harness data for agronomic solutions. Scientific data is the basis of all what we do. All our decisions must be based on sound data. And answering this question of the big opportunity to me is how we can accelerate the development of solutions by using data science. The data culture as well needs to change in our organizations to move faster to harmonize data and use it. So I would like to invite now distinguished members of a panel. So I would like to invite Dr. Sandra Milak, Chief Scientist of the CGIAR, to join us here. Also, Dr. Bernard Van Lauwe, interim deputy director of the Sustainable Farming Science Program of the CGIAR and DDGR of IITA. Dr. Agrey Agunya, executive director of head of mission Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA. Dr. Fad Adel Hamid, sorry if I pronounce incorrectly, chief researcher of the Agrometeorology Egyptian Ministry of Agriculture and Land Reclamation. We have also Emmanuel Birek is with us. Emmanuel? Is Emmanuel with us? No? And then we'll invite Dr. Jens Andersen from Wageningen University. So in the interest of time, I will start by asking a few questions. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. Can you put up something in the Oh, thank you. That's great. Thank you very much, Jens. Thank you very much. So let's go to the questions and let's hope for concrete, straight answers. I would like to start by asking Sandra, from your experience in your different roles, could you share with us one lesson or success that could be applied to more efficiently scale climate-smart agronomic solutions to help farmers adapting to these climatic conditions that are changing all the time? Perhaps from your experience in the private sector, in the breeding area, what lesson could you share with us?
Well, good morning to everybody. Really a real pleasure to be here. And I missed the discussion, just got here at the end. Heard a little bit about your questions, but really excited to be here. Well, let me start saying that I'm an agronomist by training. So I did my bachelor's degree in agronomy, and a very different time. And by then, then I became a plant breeder, and also as a plant breeder in Brazil for 10 years, a corn breeder. In the private sector, I work very close with farmers. So like day to day, we had conversations. They were in our backyard pretty much. They helped to run our trials. I mean, we had that relationship with them. And in that period, I would say between when I became an agronomist and I became a plant breeder, there was already, we could see changes in the way things going. And I would say that now where we are is different, and where we are going, it's probably even more profound, the differences that we are facing in. And let me start with my time. My time, well, first of all, we were 10% of the students in the agronomy class, women. They were not the farmers didn't trust women so much. They thought that like this is a man's job to start with. Let me just say that. But anyway, the point is not this one. The point is that farmers really work with their trustee advisor. It was a personal relationship. It still is in many ways. It still is in many ways, like, you know, farmers like, and in fact, some of the big private companies, what they do, they actually have their sales force, they are agronomist people who also are farmers. And in the communities, they play a role of leadership. They don't only sell the products, but they are part of the community. So, I mean, at the end of the day, farmers really still are, they go to their most advisory, you know, trust person. The thing is that with the information that we have today, with the tools, I think we are moving to a direction where before you have to go and call your agronomist, or you have to talk to your extensionist, or you have to, you know, talk to a person to get an answer to a question. Today, this generation that is coming, they look at their phones, they like mobile phones. And they go to the internet. So in other words, we are losing sort of space in influencing that because there are so many more influencers now around them, so many more influencers. And they get information. Sometimes it's trusted information that you can apply. Sometimes might not be the context specific information that is actionable, and that might lead them even to mistakes, right? To make their own decisions. But I think that's the challenge in front of us. How we then design this. When you ask like what we do with sustainable systems, I think we have a real good opportunity with data to start designing this. Designing in a way that becomes context specific so that the right decisions are made for the right context. It's not just something that data somebody generated in a different country and now we're trying to apply, it doesn't apply because there are so many other components into that. But that also allows to liberate and to scale this. Because the good part of this, the mobile thing, is that scalability is incredible, much more scalable by X amount of, so we can really make a difference very quickly these days with this technology, and we should. But we need to design this in a way that really allows us to be taking context specific. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You highlighted the element of trust in the advice, changing from trusting in persons to trusting now electronical tools. An interesting topic to be taken into account. Let's ask Bernard. Bernard, you have worked extensively in agronomy. Could you highlight one lesson from your experience that could help accelerating the scalability of advice, climate smart agronomic solutions?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Indeed, I've been working for a long time in this space. Yeah. I'll not be specific. Now, when I started, you had to make a decision. Do we work hyper local, as they say today, or site specific? But then you had to limit yourself to a few villages because you could not go beyond that. There were no tools, no methods, no money. Or you work more at a large scale, but then you cannot be very specific because again, the data and the tools did not exist. So today we can do both. And I think Wuletau showed a lot of examples. You can be hyper local and work at scale. And that for me has been the most significant change in agronomy in the last 5 to 10 years. Now, lessons on how to accelerate scaling. I'm really going to build on what Sandra just said. Farmers adopt things if there are two things right, I think. One is the return on investment. Is what you're seeing and what you're hearing adding value relative to what I was doing before? A really important thing. And the second thing is risk. What is the risk that when I change one of my practices that there will be no result or that I will not make that sort of gain that's anticipated? And I think also today, and again, you've seen examples of that with the data and all the stuff and all the methods that exist, we can work along those two different dimensions. Although I must say, even within our programs, that the risk component still needs work. We are not yet there. And I think it's super critical. The second dimension, and now I'm building on Sandra, indeed, we always talk about the last mile and how to get the last mile more efficient. But before you reach the last mile, you need to start with the first mile, isn't it? And there's somewhere a midway process also. I think the first mile we are doing well. This is all the models, the data, all the stuff you've been seeing. I think the CGIAR is very well capacitated to take care of the first mile with partners. I see Shemi there from APNI. We can do that. Midway, there's already some complications coming because suddenly the prototype is there, but you need to validate, you need to work with people, you need to get the user experience or the questions. We are asking the right questions. Do people understand there's all these different farmers over there? The young, the old, the female, the male, the richer ones. Do we understand the way we interact with them? Then in the last mile, indeed, the question today is, can digital tools replace people? There's a big question today raised by a lot of persons we interact with. What is the cost of delivering a piece of sensible information per person per year? What is the cost? The moment you have a physical person there, a human being, the cost increases substantially. The work in Ethiopia, I think there were some data about $30 per person per year. If you go into the digital, the LLMs and the, what is it, Ask CG? Or, yeah, very nice. You know, something like this, it can go down to $1 to $2 per person per year. But what is the reliability of those data? So I think this is really something that we, as sustainable farming, we need to really jump on that train and see if we can get that cost down from 30 to 2 or 5 or $1. This is not our job. This is a job. This is a task where we need to work with the digital advisory community. I'm sure some of the people are in the room here, where we can focus on our job, the back office, the first mile, work together on the midway, where we evaluate prototypes and hand over with our support the sort of last mile to the people that are expert in it.
Thank you,
I'll
Bernard.
stop here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moving from hyper local to globally applicable solutions and vice versa, and from the first mile to the last mile and vice versa, and the cost of delivery, of course, critical aspects. By the way, since Bernard is talking, I would like to invite you to the launching of the Sustainable Farming Science Program tomorrow afternoon, 4 p.m., room number 3, where you will continue seeing how data sciences fit into the overall sustainable farming framework. So now let's move to the next question. I would like to ask Agrey, how can institutions like CGIAR, FARA, and government organizations work together to ensure data is open, standardized, and actionable?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. When I first accepted to be on this panel, and I looked at what the panel was about, I asked myself whether I hadn't made a mistake, because data and open and standards are not the kind of thing I deal with on a regular basis. But when I thought further and looked back, by training, I am a GIS scientist. So I thought, yeah, I have a starting point to engage in this discussion. And so FARA is the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. Is a continental apex body. The research organizations on the continent have a very good structure. You have at the country level, the NAS, then sub-regional level, and then at continental level. And so within that structure, we understand that for most of the information data that is on agronomy, in agriculture, is generated, and the custodians of that data at national level. The organizations at regional and continental level rely on that and work towards generating regional and continental perspectives. And the CGIAR acts at all levels, global, national, and all levels. So when we are engaging with the CGIAR, we understand that they would be interested in integrating the information they have, or working from the information that is held at national level. So I have a short experience to share with you. I worked at ICRAF as a GIS scientist, and we had a regional project it was on soil fertility. And one of the tasks was to generate a regional soil information system, stripped down to help us with targeting, similar to the decision support system that was presented. And the first challenge that we faced was getting the national systems to share their information on soils. When we eventually succeeded to get some of them to do that, we couldn't piece it together to have a regional picture. And so the technical tools to integrate the information were there, but the biggest challenges were non-technical. We're getting the national systems, national actors to trust us with their information, for us to get the information, they had to be assured that they get something in return in terms of a service or a value. So the conclusion from that experience was that having the technical tools is not enough. It is having the partnerships that make it possible for us to access that information. And we see that not just with the national actors at continental level, we work with the regional institutions, and we work on interoperability of their systems with ours. And the challenges are the same. The technical solutions are there to integrate, to make the information in the systems interoperable, but the human issues, the negotiations around sharing information, those are the biggest challenges. Now, the big development is that we have a partnership engagement framework. We talked about it yesterday between the African institutions and the CGIAR. And one of the 5 areas of collaboration in these between the CG and these institutions is on data harmonization, data sharing, and that's an important development because that has been a big obstacle. So I am very optimistic that we will have, as CG, will be able to have access, easy access to the information held by the national systems and vice versa through this collaboration, this framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good points in terms of connecting local, country, national, continental levels. And I would like to ask Bernard, you have heard Agrey the FARA view. What would be your view from the CGIAR? How we could collaborate better, how we could work together better to ensure data is open, standardized, and actionable among multiple partners?
Yeah, thanks, Oscar. It's surprising when I listen to Agrey, how things that he talked about, which were probably quite some years ago, they are still issues we are talking about today. Yeah, I thought it was something more recent with the generation of more data, but it seems to always have been an issue. I don't, you know, this is a complex, it's often a question of sticks and carrots. We can use sticks, you have to, and if you don't, we will, I don't know, not send you money anymore or something like that. But it's not pleasant to use sticks. Sometimes you need them a little bit, but it's not pleasant. You want to look for carrots. You want to look for incentives. It's not a matter of tools. Those exist. We've seen them projected here. These tools are there. So if the tools are there, what else is missing to be sure that you can get the value out of those data? All this LLMs and CG, and they will not work if the data are not there, or they will hallucinate, as they say, isn't it? If the data are not sufficient. It's about incentives, I think. Now, which are those incentives? It's easy to say we need incentives, but what are they? And we've been discussing about this quite a bit in Excellence in Agronomy. In the CG, we are both scientists, and at the same time, we support impact delivery. And for each of us, that ratio is a little bit different. Some of our colleagues play more at the solution development level, others are more engaged in delivery. For the solution development, the papers are there, and we've seen some of the papers that Meta has been showing. These things cannot happen if we don't engage in data processes. But that's not enough. Each time when you have to submit your data, use those tools, there's a lot of time, and I think you've shown your colored graph, isn't it, Meta? So what's the return on investment? Papers could be one. Another thing, and I think that's where you go more into the sort of the development angle of the work that we are doing. For me personally, showing that all the work you've been doing, the sweat that you've experienced in the field collecting those data, seeing that there is something else coming from that you can help Wulitawo with those data to develop tools that actually make sense to people. For me, certainly, but probably for a lot of other people, that's an equally important incentive as the papers that we should write. And I think this is probably where we need to look for incentives. You will never get everyone aligned, and that's fine. You work with we often in Ethiopia, we say the coalition of the willing. You work with the people who are willing, who see the value into sharing data. You work with those and you move along with those, and in excellence in agronomy, we've seen that. We work with 100 people plus, and I've seen at least 25 that are following that. I'll not give the names. I know the names, but I will not give them. You see that happening gradually. And I think if we can build on that, use those incentives. One last point, there's a few soft skills also that are needed, soft dimensions. You need leadership. If the leads are not following, nobody will follow. Absolutely not. You need the soft skills. You need that culture change. You need that sense that people, if I do that extra effort, whether it's 60 or 20%, something else will be generated that adds a lot more value to the work I'm doing. I think it can work. So Agri, I'm quite positive. And we'll work together on that with Farah and all the regional organizations that you're representing.
Thanks, Bernard. Excellent. Incentives for sharing and using data are critical, and we need to work on that. Let me invite Fadl, who is coming from the national system. How national systems, CGIAR, and other partners could collaborate and play to their institutional strengths to accelerate digital solutions to transform agriculture.
For the first, thank you for invitation, and first we have a lot of challenge of agriculture sector and how to use technology and use data for our sector. We have a small farmer, not have biggest farmer, or this small farmer. You don't need high technology. You don't need highest price, and you need simple technology. You need the lowest price to change the traditional technology to the automatic technology. We have a lot of challenge, for example, weak digital infrastructure and the lack of data integration and the standardization between the stakeholders, and the absence of clear protocol for data management that ensure quality result and use private at the same time. And we have big challenge in the agriculture sector, climate change. We have a lot of data for climate change, but no, as a farmer, not don't like or don't friendly for scientific data. We like the recommendation, extension recommendation, small recommendation. CGIAR help us to symbolize that the digital performance data and help us increase capacity building and increase awareness because farmer don't like change to from digital and from traditional to digital transformation. We have a lot of successful story. For example, weather forecast system. We have weather forecast system in Ministry of Agriculture. This system is created by partnership with CGIAR and another international partners. Develop this system to generate the recommendation data to help farmer to avoid the climate change risk. The farmer don't have a lot of awareness, and I don't have a lot of money to go to this advice and go to the information. We help the disciplines this to information and symbolize that information to farmer how to avoid the climate change risk. For example, send SMS message and use social media to help a farmer to avoid this problem because we have a lot of we have increased extreme weather event. If you farmer learn how to work with Ministry of Agriculture and international partnership to avoid this problem, we have damage and have a loss of the production. And we have problem for the production. We don't have food security for all crops. We have some gaps for wheat or another strategic crops. And work with CGIAR to increase the staff awareness of ARC and help us to improve the digital, improve the database and the platform for science. This is some topic work with CGIAR.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You're highlighting the role of national organizations for the last mile, how that information can reach farmers in a useful way to help them making their decisions. Allow me to now move to Jens. Jens, from your perspective, a university in advanced research organization, how these types of organizations could join the effort in a multi-partner approach to make data available and transformed into practical solutions.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me last minute join. I think we have already established very strong relationships between the CGIAR and the university communities, both within Africa and beyond. I'm from one of the two universities in the Netherlands that people cannot pronounce the name of. I'm from Wageningen, you can guess the other one. I'm here a bit with an identity crisis. I was trained as a social scientist, but I find myself working in agronomy all the time. And I'm working currently in an agronomy department. And I was struck by the stories here, and I think they're very interesting and they're very promising. I hear a lot of talk about first miles, about last miles. And the first mile, if you're going on a journey, in the Netherlands, the journey is not very interesting because it's usually short. But in other more substantial countries, journeys are a bit longer. The first mile is always exciting, right? You're starting off, it's great. The last mile is also exciting because you're almost there. And as Bernard alluded to, it's the long stretch in between, which is usually boring, hard work, and so on. But there's also time for refueling or engine maintenance. And that I've heard not very much about. Yeah, we are talking about delivering, but I didn't hear a lot about how do we deal with when we are there, how we are going to do it better the next time. How are we going to improve the journey? And to who do we listen for that? I'm coming from a farming systems study group, and we are looking at different farmers and farmers' diversity. We hear a lot about participation, but we don't hear a lot about diversity of farms and different orientations of farms. May I ask you, can you please raise your hand if you use the Mentimeter? You see, it's a minority. I knew this, of course, I knew this. Yeah? But that's exactly the problem that we have with many of these digital tools. Yeah, we open them up for everybody to use. There was a nice slide. But a lot of people are not using them, and they cannot use them. They don't have access maybe, or they don't know how to use them. And this is exactly the problem that we're dealing with in this space. Whose problems are we addressing with our digital solutions? And I think it's important that we keep the eye on the ball. For who are we working, and how do we target them, and how do we understand how they're functioning? Within the CGIAR, and I've worked for some years in the CGIAR, we know very well how to generate crop advice, agronomy advice, fertilizer advice for specific crops. But we all know that farmers are not growing one crop. They cannot afford the fertilizer usually, and so on. So how do we keep an eye on those farmers and how different they can be? And how can we keep on learning and improving our DSTs, our decision support tools, by learning from how they pan out in the field? Yeah, we are targeting a lot of farmers. We want to reach a large number of farmers, but we hardly hear what happens with these tools after 5, 6 years. Are they still operational? Are farmers using them? How do farmers want them to change, to address new issues? And I think there's a major gap still there that we need to work on. And from the university side, if I may speak from all the universities, I think we are happy to work together with the CG on that.
Thanks, Jens.
Thanks.
Excellent point. How do we make sustainable businesses that...
It has been alluded to.
Exactly, that the advice becomes a business that is self-sustained. Very good. Let me address one question to Fadl and Agrey about policies. Could you suggest a couple of, or one single type of policy that would support data-driven agronomy at scale from your perspective, continental, regional, and national, please?
It's a policy that would provide incentives for sharing information. We have presently a lot of independent service providers, companies that are distributors of, say, of fertilizer. They have massive amounts of information. And this information is valuable for creating a national database, say, on soil information. But there's no requirement for them to share that information. There's no incentive in many cases. So it is, I agree with Bernard when he says we should focus more on incentives. Yeah, if there's a policy that would make it an incentive for all these independent producers of information to share it with the national agency that's mandated to be a custodian. That is one. The other one would be about standardization, because for sharing to take place, we need the standards. So I don't have a clear policy. It's just a broad point that I would make, that if we had incentives and standards.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Father, please.
Based on the current national needs and the strategy for improve the agriculture and the food productivity or production system, collaborate with international and national partners. There is a strategy needed to develop an initiative solution for digital transformation, create clear protocol, organize data ownership, privacy, and governance to elegant data driver agronomic solution with climate change. We work we have a strategy for digital transformation in Ministry of Agriculture. we work with CGIAR and the national and international partners to know how to apply the program and the project for this strategy, and how to improve the policy for use the digital transformation of agriculture.
Thank you very much. Very good point. I would like to close by asking Sandra, within the CGIAR and the portfolio, what types of policies, incentives, or procedures could be put in place to accelerate the evolution of data management, data sciences?
It's a big question. It's a very big question that we need to get our act together as a community sooner than later. and I know there is a lot of things going on and a lot of initiatives going on in that sense, but there is still, in the era of AI, we need to put some guardrails on some of these things. At the same time, we need to be able to also leverage information to move forward, because I think that's a very important. We're generating lots and lots of information. We need to be able to actually utilize this information to be able to move forward. So it is a conundrum, because first how you go about, making sure that information is kept private, or the rights of privacy is respected to farmers. But on the other side, how we actually utilize information collectively. And I know that there is a middle point that we can get to it, which is probably sharing anonymous information, the protecting. I mean, there is a middle point, and that's what we need to drive towards. We need to drive towards policies that allows us to share information in a way that keeps privacy, that keeps, the rights to the information to the farmers and into all the institutions who are behind that. But at the same time, the collectives allows us to move this agenda, because otherwise, you say, okay, I have the data, but I'm just protecting. Where are we going to get collective if we keep doing that, right? And it's a hard one that I ask, please help us to solve the problem. Help us to look at this problem in collective. I think we can do it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. And with that, we close this panel with a big thanks. Please, a big clap to the panel members. And we move to the last part of this session, please.
So thanks so much again to the panel. And while they're taking a picture, maybe Oscar, please.
The moderator.
Usually you ask for questions and you get comments. So this time I'm giving you total freedom. Is there a reflection or a comment or anything that you'd like to get into the room? We have time for just one or two burning questions or comments. No, I'm not going to go there. Yeah, please.
So thanks. I'm kind of interested in terms of the data and the decision support, and whether in sustainable farming we go from decision support to behavioral change, and understanding what changes minds and practices, and we present the information, and I have lots of good intentions and not much action myself, and I know farmers are the same. So in our decision support tools, are we also looking at action support tools, and how we link into other initiatives that may have behavioral scientists that can help nudge people to actually implement some of these advice?
I can start some of that. I mean, it's a big question, big challenge. I think one of the key things is, as you said, making it actionable. Providing information is one thing. You saw the Excel sheet that Meta shared. That's not useful. She uses her magic to turn that into something that's a lot more useful. But then the presentation through the app or the website or the training is another major step. Maybe that's part of the last mile. There has to be a lot of human-centered design, understanding that, in some locations, there's this language versus that language, and it's the same language maybe on Google Translate, but there's local nuances. Swahili in this area is different than that. Little things like that can make a massive difference. So one of the things that like Digital Green does is videos with people who are from that location. If you show how to do something with someone who looks not close enough to you, you may be distrustful. So there can be really small little things like that, that it can be the same information, but you need to translate that into something that's really actionable. And there's that trustworthiness that it's not going to just hallucinate and give you some crazy advice. But that process can take a huge amount of time, that testing with farmers, with people in the field, that what works and what doesn't, with the placement of the buttons, all those kind of parts really matter, make a big difference. And that, I think we need to put more emphasis and trial and error into making that an effective part.
Just to complement on that, so far in the SFP, the way we organize is the behavioral science group is separate, and the focus is the last mile part. So on the advisory, but as you indicated, I think as we go forward, we need to see how those parts, the behavioral, the human-centered design approach should start from the beginning, from the designing of the decision support tools, and along the way, it will help you to improve the design and also, make efficient the development process of the tools. So that's how I see it now.
Jens, did you want to comment on this? Seems like it's right up your alley. Not to put you on the spot. Yeah. Can you use the mic, please? Thanks.
Assist me, please. I think you have a very good point, where there's much need to understand better what the reasoning of farmers is, and of different farmers, and to learn from that and to build our DSTs on that. And I think that requires more behavioral scientists, not just nudging of economists, but an understanding of how people reason themselves, and how that can be translated into advisory that is actually actionable from the perspective of the farmer.
Thanks. Any other burning, and I mean burning, comment? If not, I'm standing between. Oh, right here. You've already had one. Please, burning. Please go ahead.
Luigi Bozzi, Professor International University Network on Biodiversity, Cultural Diversity. There are new trends in international policy in relation to data management. Just to mention, it is very appropriate, the CBD, the Global Biodiversity Framework, Target 2021, is a target on knowledge management. So knowledge management is a science. We need generation of data and generation of new data tools, methods. But in parallel, we need to develop knowledge management tools and knowledge management science. It is quite impossible to produce a car without thinking about drivers, without thinking about users, or without thinking about the infrastructures we need to utilize cars. Just a very simple example. And beyond the knowledge management, behavioral science, I fully agree. Behavioral sciences is a fundamental pillar of this process. So maybe we should think about shifting, innovating the way we address data challenges. How many users? This one is a very important statistics. And targets of data. Farmers, but also university, for example. how many students know about these data tools, and how many courses in the schools of agriculture study methodology to produce and use this database?
Thanks. Minute, 30 seconds, or just to take note of the comment?
I take note of the comment, and I think you have a point in terms of the curriculum. It's something that does need to change because we pump out scientists who know the science really well, but really are not trained about data management, fair data, standardized data. That's not part of their training at all. So I agree. I mean, I think what you're saying is that we have to start earlier, sooner, and do better. And I agree with that.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I'd like to just close and, oh, do you want to do quick, very quick, 30 seconds? Use the mic, please.
Just I want to mention that we work with CGIAR for the successful story in Egypt with ICARDA. We have application, mobile application. The name is application GeoAgromas. This application help farmer to good practicals for agriculture under climate change condition. Tomorrow we'll have session for this application and how to scale this application in Egypt. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And with that, we'll skip the closing and we'll just say thank you so much to all the presenters, the panelists, and everybody who participated. So thanks for coming early today.